Okay, good evening. Thank you for coming out on this cold evening at the end of our semester here at the school. You might notice the school in the way was in a little bit of a bustle and disarray because this is our second or third week of final reviews, and today we were looking at the thesis work of our master's students, and you'll see some of the vestiges of that from today around the building. So for those of you that don't know me, I'm Richard Sommer, professor here and dean of the Daniels faculty. And it's my pleasure to welcome you. Before we get started, as is our practice now at the university and in many places in Canada, I want to read our land acknowledgement. And I wish to acknowledge this land on which the University of Toronto operates. For thousands of years, it has been the traditional land of the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, and most recently the Mississaugas of the Credit River. Today, this meeting place is still the home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land. Tonight's event, this lecture, is part of our 2019-20 public programming series. Hindsight is 2020, which focuses on phenomena that have emerged since the turn of the millennium and have influenced the fields of architecture, landscape architecture, art, forestry, and urban design. Over this course of this semester and next, our speakers and exhibitions will explore how disciplines continue to be transformed, or our disciplines continue to be transformed by upheavals in technology, politics, and the environment, and how reframing the recent past might help us better address the next 20 years and beyond. So tonight, I'm very excited to present Edouard François of the Maison Edouard François office. And we just met this last fall. He happened to be in Toronto on some business, and I had seen glimpses of some of his work, but when I sat down and saw all that he was doing, I just felt that we had to find a way to present him here at the school. So for over 20 years of practice, Edouard François has relentlessly blurred and sometimes completely erased the line between the way that architecture and landscape appear by using plant life as an integral aspect of his designs. His Parisian flower tower, a 10-story apartment tower, has continuous rows of bamboo-filled planters permanently affixed to its balconies. A clever irrigation system keeps the bamboo lush and tall. The result is a kind of hanging garden, a vertical oasis in the middle of a dense city block. Actually quite remarkable. And the bamboo isn't just for show, it cools the building and provides a convenient privacy screen for its inhabitants. François continues to experiment with biological elements in his most recent commissions, like the M6B2 Tower of Biodiversity in Paris, which has an exterior design to act as a habitat for climbing vines. In François' hands, these horticultural touches are not just mere flourishes, he makes them appear structural and almost inevitable. So even when he's not using plant life, he always has an eye towards sustainability. His design for the Hotel Barrière Le Foucault at the Champs-Élysées mimics the hotel's antique facade by contrasting it with the adjacent replica facade made of gray concrete, and act as simultaneously, I would say this is, in this case, another blurring, this time not between plant life and the material life of architecture, but an intentional blurring between history and innovation. His office's influence reaches far beyond France. They have been called upon to design large-scale projects in Senegal, India, Sri Lanka, Qatar, Brazil, among other places. And Edouard has been the recipient of many accolades. For example, in 2012, he was named the Chevalier of the French Order of Arts and Letters. So, in a time of increasing concern about the ways the built environment impinges on the natural world, his sensitive approach suggests a very distinct way forward, and we are honored to have him here tonight. So the format's going to be, he's going to give a talk on his work, and as time allows, we'll take some questions from the audience afterwards. So please join me in welcoming François.
Thank you. Let's see. Thank you for coming. I'm going to present you 20 years of building that are focused about problematic that are now in the time, but that I designed 25 years ago. I did my first green buildings 30 years ago. And at this moment, it was difficult, very difficult to have commissions. So my career grows very slowly. I do 2 flats, 10 flat, 20 flat, 50 flat, 100 flat, 200 flat, 300, 500, and now I'm working with 600 flats at the same commission. So it's growing slowly. What is interesting actually is, that's why I'm going to show you all these green buildings. It's, I was in July here. It was extremely hot, and I think for everybody worldwide, it was the same problematic. And now we're thinking about architecture and urban problem in a totally different way. We need to put plants to make the climate of the cities more and more acceptable. And I'm going to show you all my experimentations. This is one of my first big commission. It was very long ago. They have problems to make a motorway passing a super nice valley. There was a valley protected, and I imagine to put the bridge inside of a tunnel and to put a lot of trees, and the tunnel goes in the canopy of the trees that are planted inside the water. This is another very old building that I did, I think, in 1990. It was the headquarters of a station of treatment water. This picture was probably one of the first picture computing that was calculated in Canada. At this moment, to calculate this image, the computer in France wasn't enough strong, so it was calculated here and it returns. This is my first building. It was little housing in front of a beautiful forest, and I just wanted to do a forest. So it is the problematic. The context problematic. This is, you see, you have boxes in concrete, and they are inside trees. And now you could see, you don't see the building, and you have the living room on the ground floor, and the rooms are inside of the tree. These are different views. You have the barbecue, because it's a holiday building. And then you could see it's something that doesn't look to a building. Now it is this building has a lot of visitor. They wanted to go there. It was one of the first building in France where the facade was a green facade. When I submit my project, I put material of the facade, trees. And so it goes to the préfet, because they have very high authority who allowed the administrative to submit. And he said, Edouard, you cannot say that it's trees, because trees, it's not a building. But now, I think everywhere you could put on an administrative authorization, my facade is tree, because it's the first facade. You could see different views. This is a little school that I built. We are in 1994. It is a school for young, very young persons, and it's a cantilever. It's a 30 meters cantilever inside trees over the courtyard of the school. It was being realized. It's a very, very important cantilever, so the children, they are in a sort of they're in a sort of nuage, how do you call a nuage? A cloud over the floor. The beam was something extremely challenging. This is the main beam. I didn't want the beam to look as a beam. So I designed the beam myself. And I asked to the engineer, you have to calculate it, how big must be each tubes. But you mustn't change the tubes. And so that's why you have very small tubes and very big tubes. And it was a very efficient beam. This is, we are in 2000, so it's 20 years ago. It was my first big commission. It was 60 flats in Montpellier. And it was with a private developer. And the private developer, they are quite difficult to manage because this guy, they only think about money. So it's like when you do a tauromachie like that with a torero, and you have the client that is a big bull and you are afraid. And so when you have this kind of individual, you have to show models that are unbelievably strong. So they must be totally afraid. If they're afraid, so they don't approach you, so you could have a conversation. This model was exhibited in CCA in the exhibition. It was, I think, 2 years ago. The exhibition was about health, and it was one of the big frame. 5 years ago. It was a building in Gabion. I did that before Herzog & de Meuron did the winery. I have some relation with Herzog & de Meuron. You will see my project, and there's a lot of projects that are quite near, just 1 or 2 years after. We know each other very well. And so I was focused on making my building green. So it is this building is for housing building. And I asked to the Minister of the Culture to pay me shit to paint the building in shit with seeds. And it was Jean-Jacques Ayagon. It was in 2000, and he said, wait, this is a very nice idea, Edouard, because my client didn't want to paint the building with shit, big shit. And so it is the Minister of the Culture who give the furniture. You see the guy who is painting. See the guy here? This is shit, big shit, and he's painting the building. My poor client, when he discovered that, he was totally afraid, and it was a scandal in the city center because it was smelling horribly in all the city during 2 days. And after that, you have plants that goes out the gabion. You could see the balconies. This was an existing tree, and I didn't want to cut it, so I put just a balcony on the top of it. And you see here the vegetation is growing directly on the facade. This is a pilot of a Air France company who buy that, and I put a box for him that is in cantilever because he liked that. Different views. This is one of the first buildings that was dealing with new balconies. When I did this building, balconies was a shitty problematic for architects. They want facade with windows, but balcony, it wasn't interesting. And I was thinking, balcony is interesting. These are the balconies of the building. You take a passerelle, and then the balcony is a box open over, and it's in the middle of the trees. And I plant all these trees quite very big. That is the Champs-Élysées Hotel Fouquet's, and it was my first commission in town. I had a lot of commissions outside of town in the green areas, and I was quite well known about the problematic of green buildings. And how did I have this commission? This is another story. It was one of the first new luxury hotel in Paris. It is a palace. And I had been convocated by the architecture of a historical architect, and they said to me, Edouard, we had a meeting, and we allowed you to do a green building, a green facade. And I said, hey guys, first I'm the architect, you have not to tell me what I have to do. A green building on the Champs-Élysées is really a shitty building. We are in the Haussmannian area, I will do an Haussmannian building. And so they didn't appreciate at all. This was the facade, you see, and on the paper, this looks like a window. This looks like a window, and this looks like a square with nothing. And the historical monument guy said, Edouard, what is that? And I said, these are the windows. He said, no, you're joking, the windows are there. And so I said to them, we cannot continue this stupid conversation because you cannot recognize what is a window and what is not a window. And I said, I'm going to ask directly the authorization to the Minister of the Culture. You see, this is the windows. And you have a door in a door. And it takes 1 year to arrive to convince everybody to have the authorization. This is my first building, green building in Paris. It was a dream of me, and at the same moment, a dream of Christian de Portzamparc. And you know my dream? My dream was when you have a green park, the green park must return on the facade of the building to make the park bigger. And the dream of Christian de Portzamparc was to have, you see the buildings behind that looks through, so everybody is looking at the same moment the park. And so we crossed that, and Christian de Portzamparc did a competition that I know that I will be the winner. So it was an arranged competition. In France, we used to do that sometimes. This is the building, and this is the park, and my building, whose name is Tower Flower. At this moment, I wanted to do this building, this one, and to do a sort of a very green space. And I want to do a park also. I want to do a big waterbed, and so when you walk on the park, you have waves of green. So, but Christian de Portzamparc and the city of Paris, they said, stop, you do just this one and it's finished. So bye-bye the waterbed, the green waterbed with grass on it. These are the pots here. And all the building, I want to do an ugly building. All my buildings is dealing with experimentation. I want to do a building, in one hand, you say, it's really a shame to do that, and the other hand, it's very dolly. When you are dealing with plants, plants are so dolly that if you do the building behind dolly also, everybody will vomit. It's too sweet. So you need to have a building very, very bad. So all the building is in concrete, everything. And then after that, you have the plant. You see, this is in concrete behind the pots. This is in concrete. The floors are in concrete. This is silicium concrete. It is a quality of concrete that is very, very strong. This is you see, this is concrete. This is the tube for automatic irrigation. And here, this is a view that I like very much. It is the view from the neighbor. And the neighbor likes me very much. He said, look, Edouard, I have a fantastic view on your building. It's a little bit like there were no neighbor in front of me because it's green. This is another commission I had in 2003, for the city. It is a social housing. It's a high-density building, and I did all this building with different facade. I was convinced that we had to cut our buildings in small part. A city is made with a certain scale of buildings, and when you have a commission that is very big, if you do the same facade, you're destroying the city. A city is not horizontal. So this is the way I cut it in small pieces with strong materiality. This is copper, this is concrete, expecting plants on it. This is zinc, this is copper. You have different materiality. And to make all this huge block correctly connected to the city, I designed, and this is something that is very important in my work, I designed these buildings. I designed these buildings there, here, and these ones that are a copy of existing buildings just nearby. So it's difficult to see if it's existing, not existing. The things are fitting together. For example, this is a building that was existing. So try not to demolish everything and try to make your urbanism totally connected with the context. This was the first, when we delivered the building. I put all the money in the soil, and I put very small plants. I put plants that cost €1. This was a tree that I liked. It's another story, but look, all that cost €1. And I put all the money in the ground. I put organic earth, Demeter, 1.5 meters, so it was extremely costly to put all this ground. And this is expecting plants that will arrive, and it will be a wild garden. You see, there was quite nothing. And in 3 years, it becomes totally a wild area with plants that are exuberant. I will show you. So this is how it was when the model, how it was at the beginning, and what I expect. In 2012, look, it's totally green, and now it's totally the plant and the building are totally connected together, and it's dealing with the problematic of season. Sometimes you have flowers, and the guys are living inside that sort of green building. You have the streets here. I wanted, I like very much the staircase when they go to the sky. And so you go to your flat, taking here, and then you go to your flat, you go to your flat, and you go to your flat. And it is inside a big block. And inside the block, you don't need to have an entrance with a corridor that goes to an elevator. It's better to go directly looking the sky, and then you enter in your building. Quite recently, in 2010, it was the first tower in Paris, new tower here. And so town mayor make a competition that I know that I will be the winner because it was totally organized, because they wanted a green building for the first new towers, because the problematic of the tower in Paris has been stopped in 1970 by the President Giscard d'Estaing, who said, I don't want from the Élysée to see towers. And so it was stopped. And the first new tower, that is a tower in Paris, is 50 meters high. It's a small tower for you. But in Paris, it is something very big. And imagine a tower that is dealing with biodiversity. So on the top of the building, all the plants will be totally wild. We will go with the students in the forest to find seeds. And the quality of the biodiversity of the seeds, when they will grow, they will disseminate seeds wild in Paris to regenerate the biodiversity of Paris. This is the image for the competition. I said, yes, this is my building. And they say, oh, Edouard, it's very nice. We don't see nothing. And they asked me about this little building. They said, is it an extension of you? I said, no, no, it's a tree. Oh, it's okay. And this one also, I said, it's okay. So it was the most politically correct picture for new buildings, new towers in Paris. That was the models. This is one plant. Here you have balconies. Here you have a sort of pathway. And here you have the pots. And the pots are just 30 centimeters diameter and 3.5 meters long. And I was dealing with the botanic guys to find plants that like deep pots. And so we make very deep pots. And so the roots, that goes 3.5 meters deep. So they like it very much. And you have this kind of plants you find in the mountain. The roots goes in sort of holes in between the rocks. These are the details of the tubes. A big tube in stainless steel. This is the automatic irrigation. And with the students, we go in the forest to find the seeds. And this is a botanic garden. And so these are the plants that comes from seeds that was took by the students. So they were educated without water and without engrais, Monsanto, without Monsanto. Because you have to know that the plants, they are like the human, they are drug addict. So if you give them a lot of food, a lot of water, after that they said, please, more. And so in the nature, they have very few water and they have very few food, and then they are very strong. It's a little bit like a cat. If you buy a cat in a gardener, industrial gardener, the cat you will buy, you put in your garden, and after 2 days, the cat is died. If you buy a wild cat, you put in your garden, after 2 days, the cat is not there. He's gone. This is how the seeds will grow. You have very small plants, and then it grows a little bit more and a little bit more. So for this project, we did experimentation. These are the tubes. On the top are the plants that we put to make them grow. So they are very small. I'd like to deal with patience. Everybody, when they are dealing with nature, they want immediately the thing to be totally green. Sometimes, to go slowly, it's a process. So it's a very interesting process. So we put the tubes here, and we put some tubes here, directly inside the ground, because we want to observe when the tubes are outside with the sunshine, they get hot, and when they are inside, the temperature is quite stable. But finally, it grows better in tubes that are outside. At a certain moment, we have to close the experimentation, and we have to cut the tubes to see the progressions of the roots. You see here, the roots are growing inside. And the television in France, they like very much to come in my office, because I'm quite a funny guy. And they said, do you have something? They said, Edouard, do you have something? Because we want to do a reportage on your office that is very interesting. I said, yes, we are cutting tubes. It's the end of experimentation. And we will open and we will see if the prototype are okay or not okay. And I said, yes, but it is risky for the project because we will do that in direct. I said, that's okay, we will do in direct, this is life. And so this is the guy who is making the film for the news of the Friday evening news. And the progression of the roots were incredibly, you see, they were 3 meters long. So that means that the experimentation was correct. At first, the plant didn't grow very much here, but prepares the roots. And so we know that the building will be green in the probably 6 or 10 years. Expecting the plants to be big, I choose to put a material here that is dealing with a future green. And I had the intuition that it could be in the titanium. And it's a green titanium. This is the color, natural color of titanium. And nobody knows how to do it. It's very, very difficult to find titanium. And I find a guy in Japan who was doing glass like that for a tea ceremony in titanium that are colored like that. So when you put titanium in water with electricity, the color is naturally changing. And the Japanese guy accepts to extend his factory 10 times bigger to do the facade of the project in France. So it was a very interesting experimentation. We go to Japan, to this ephemeral factory to see the guy was producing all the titanium. And I choose the titanium because we have to deal with recycling problematic. And I know that titanium will be never thrown in the garbage. This is a material, very rare material. And it's like, for example, gold is very interesting material. Silver, titanium are the material of first we have to play with because they have the value of recycling inside. At this moment, when I present the project to the town mayor said, Edouard, you cannot do a social building in titanium. This is impossible. What will I say to the population if you do that? They will say, the town mayor is throwing the money and is doing the social buildings in titanium. I said, okay, please, let me tell you something. This is not a titanium facade. It is a temporary storage of a material that is very important for the French industry. And when we will have problem with the Chinese guy that will block the furniture of titanium, we will give that to the industry to make planes, to make... and it will be a normal facade. So look at that as a temporary storage. And I think this is interesting when you are dealing with materiality, to think that probably it's temporary. It could go there, go another. It's like gold. If you have a pencil in gold, like I have, massive gold, probably it was a teeth before, probably it was a ring. You don't know. This material is always moving. This is the titanium facade, piece of titanium. This is the building. Different views of the building. You see the plants that are growing slowly, and we have oaks that grows very quickly in this tower, in this condition. Now it's a new commission that I have. It's in building, so we are doing it now. We are doing commission that are. This commission is 40,000 meters square, so it's quite big, 350 flats. And it was a competition that wasn't organized for me, but I win. Here you have the stadium of Nice, and all this area must be demolished and to do a park. And this is going to be a new area for housing and for retail. I concentrated all the buildings here to do a huge, huge park, and I want the park to be in relation with the building. But we have here is one main urban streets of Nice with building with a certain scale, with a certain quality. And here we have the development that is in relation with the park. And so we manage these two problematics. Here we have the corner. We did the corner here in front of this Boulevard Gorbelin. And the corner, we did very thin buildings. Here, this is one building, another one here, and another one here. So we are in the scale of the Nice Boulevard. Something important actually in our work is we are doing metropolitan architecture, and the specificity of the metropole is the materiality of the metropole is stone. So we always now are building with stone. So for example, this building, this little one, is a massive stone. As the project before, I wanted when you see a building, you could understand that this is for Nice. So for example, this is a copy of a building that is in Nice. But it's not a copy, a boring copy like Disneyland. It is a copy made by a guy who is totally passionate by the Nice building. So it's exactly a Niçois building. All the details are informed, and so it's we introduce that in the huge block. And so we have little pieces that are totally in the scale and in the spirit of the area. This is the elevation. You could see Le Petit Niçois here, two buildings. Because we have to take care about the scale of the city, and the city is made with these blocks. And the only block that is allowed in the city is the forest. A forest, so this will be a forest. A forest, you have not to cut the forest. A forest, you can have a huge piece of leaves, of trees. It's not like buildings. And after that, all what is in green will be green facade in relation with the park. So this is the green facade. What is important is now, I believe that after a certain number of experimentation, I believe that the best way to do a green building is to have the floor underneath, and you put plants, and the plant grows from the floor. So here you have the trees, and when you walk in the street, first you go at the first two levels. So this is very important. This is the other angle, so everything is green. This is in the park. This is from the park, and I will show you how will we manage a new green facade. We are doing a lot of studies in botanic. So here you have the plants that are going. We have pots. We put pots. And after that, we create something that we name Internet des plantes. It is the anastomose of the voie aérienne. Anastomose is, here you have the pots in red. And we're going to connect all the plants together like that. We are connecting all the plants together. And so after that, you cut, and they don't need the pots because it's only one big plant, but very quickly. And so when the plants that are in the north facade have problems of sun, they ask the neighbors by the connection to give the food or the elements that they need. This is the inside. It's all the marble that you could find, totally random. This is a coupe of Nice because it was the past stadium. And you could see the detail. This was here inside the stadium before. Different views. And underneath you have a huge supermarket. This is actually on the site. These are different buildings in Grenoble that were doing with the same process. This is a new tower that we have 2 years ago. It's Le Grand Paris Express. We have a metro underneath, new station, and then on the stations you will have towers. So this is the new tower that we develop. We have the sort of green signal, and underneath we have elements that you can understand that are totally coated with a strong materiality in stone. On the top, we will have a bar, a rooftop, with share the view of Paris. So the building is on building now. Other views. Materiality. We're dealing with urban agriculture. And this is the rooftop, big rooftop. Another very interesting experimentation that we are doing in Bordeaux-Brazza. Actually, we don't want to design the facade. I think it's a shitty problematic for an architect to design facade. So we imagine to do a sort of structure, very boring, very simple, and we are going to deliver not flats but volumes. We sell volumes, and the guy who buys is doing his facade himself. So he could do full windows, a lot of windows, 2 windows. It depends how he wants to organize his flat. He's only obliged to do that in wood. So here you can see this guy, he did his facade. He did his facade before this one. This one is new because it's a bit older. And the building is only a process of users that are doing a facade themselves. And one part of the building, we want to do a huge agriculture area for animals. And so we put all the project on pillars. You have all the pillars, and you could see animals underneath. And so everything is on pillar. You have the animals here. When it's raining, it goes there, and we have a sort of shower. The water returns underneath. All the buildings, the facade inside, are in a stainless steel mirror, so the sunshine goes inside. And this is a private area for an agriculture, so no one can enter inside. And so when your daughter didn't finish his meal, you open the window and you put it outside, and it's for the animals, for the goat and the chicken will eat your food. Different views. So you have the goats, the animals, and it's like a zoo. Here you have a sort of a gap, so you cannot enter and the animals cannot go out. We are in the center of a city. This is one of my best experimentation, I think. It's independent terrace. It takes me a lot of time to arrive to do that. I saw, it was eight years ago, in 2007, no, it's a little bit more, I saw the problematic of the towers. Paris, you have towers, and I said, Edouard, you have to prepare yourself to do a tower, because you don't know what is a tower. You are in Saint-Germain-des-Prés, in a very chic flat. You see Eiffel Tower in a city center, so you're a very bourgeois flat. And I said to myself, you have to live in a tower to see what is a tower first, because to design a tower is something quite big. You don't know. When you design it, it's huge. How huge it is difficult to know. So I take a flat here at the 5 level here. And when I go to my flat, you always have a guy who's pushing the last bottom. It's like he puts the finger in your eye. So for me, it begins to be unsupportable when I go to my flat. Here, you have a guy said, oh, look, guy, here, he pushed. So I asked the owner to go in the highest flat. So he said, that's okay. You could go in the highest flat. But the highest flat was the biggest flat. It was the past flat of Marguerite Yourcenar. I changed all the decor of the flat. This is the new decor of the flat. And this was my living room. This is the view. This is the bath, a bath inside the living room. So we take the bath and we look at the view. It was really fantastic. And after a certain time, I said to myself, Edouard, it's not possible to live like that in a so big flat. Before you have a flat that is 60 meters square, and now you have 2,020 meters square. You have all the terrace. It's not possible. You are a Chrétien, you must think to the other guys. The problematic is not to put the richest guys on the top and the poor guys downstairs. And I saw the sentence of Saint Mathieu. The first guy will be the last guy, and the last guy will be the first guys. And I imagine that the lowest flat will have the lowest flat will have the highest terrace, and the highest flat will be the lowest terrace. So it is totally Saint Mathieu. It is totally Catholic and communist. And cutting a pine tree, an ananas, a pine, how do you call it? Pineapple, sorry. Cutting a pineapple, I had this vision of this organization. This is the lowest flat, will have its terrace higher, and the highest flat will have the terrace lower. So when I had this picture, it was obvious. I had a vision of a new organization of a tower. So I go with my pineapple to find a client that wants to do a building like that with me. I had to design something more acceptable, so I make this section here about the flats. And I find a client who was interested about that. And this is the first building. This is Christian de Portzamparts here. And to find I find a client, but I had to find a site. So I asked Christian de Portzamparts, do you have a site, an urban site, where I can put my pineapple? And he said, yes, I have one in Grenoble. This is the entrance here. You have the position of the pineapple, and this is the entrance. These are for a typical level. There's no balcony on the building, and so here you have a sort of a balcony of middle season. So it opens like that, so it creates a sort of middle season balcony. You could see here. And when it opens, and we associate with a terrace. This is the terrace. So it's very huge terrace. It's 35 meters square, and And do you have a little private area with a toilet and little kitchen, storage, and then you have a huge balcony. You have the view, so everybody is sharing the view. This is the highest flat was the lowest balcony. But the lowest balcony is okay. It's like that. And so everybody is sharing, and this building has been sold like that, mixing the properties. So when you have a flat that is at the first level, north facade, you will have a terrace, highest south facade. So we share orientation, altitude, views for everybody. So we are on the top of the pineapple. And the building has been sold in 1 week. Everybody wants to have that. And after that, you have guys who buy a flat and a terrace, and they rent it. And you have a queue of guys that want to rent there that is really impressive. So we share the view. We're totally in Saint-Mathieu. And so we create a new function. After, when you have a flat, you have the parking, you have a storage, and then you have a terrace. And what's interesting in this model is if you have a few money, it's difficult to buy a flat with a huge terrace, because you say, if I have a bankruptcy problem, the terrace, I cannot sell it. But with this project, you can sell your terrace. The terrace is totally independent of your flat. Different views. This is a little building that I put just against my building to make a sort of the idea that the area is unfinished. What is very difficult when you see urban projects, they look finished, but you have to make the vision that it is unfinished. So you can imagine that you will demolish this building to make a higher building in 2, 3, 4 years, next 4 years. And this idea makes a lot of persons thinking about. And actually, so we have 4 projects in development in France. We have 1 in Dubai. In Dubai, I didn't speak about Catholicism with Sheikh El Maktoum. I said to Sheikh El Maktoum, everybody has a sea view. We said, oh, super, I don't have a building with everybody with a sea view. Here, this is in India, we have 2 projects like that. In Panama, we have 1. In Brazil, we have 1. And we have contact here in Toronto to do 1. In Morocco, we're doing 1. In Montreal, we have a contact to do 1. This is in India. In India, the problematic is the highest you go, the best the temperature is. So everybody wants to have a sort of penthouse that is associated to the flat. This is how it works. You have elevator that goes directly to your flat. In Paris, near Paris, we're doing a favela on the top of that. So everybody could do everything they want. They will choose the fence, they will choose the facade, they will choose the plant. And so I wanted to look like a huge favela and so actually it's in commercialization. And everybody is very, very happy to choose his own fence. So we asked some guys to put that in, very baroque, in wood or in steel. This is in Marseille. So the idea is, you see, everybody has a sea view. So this flat that is not so interesting, yes, the view of the sea. This is another in India. This is another one in Morocco. You see? These are the balconies of the flats that are underneath. And I did a little book, La hauteur pour tous, altitude for everybody. This is another funny project that we have. It's in the Limassol in Chypre. Yeah, in Chypre. It's for the owner of EasyJet. It's a nice lady. And we were thinking about, she wants super building for Russian guys that have a lot of money, and they want extravagant building. So we imagine pots that are like this kind of shape, to have a swimming pool inside, and to have huge plants. Different. This is the way how it's organized. We will have a lot of typology of plants. We're dealing with problematic of mycelium that is very important in the floor. And so this is a huge system of vertical corridor of mycelium. This is different section, how it's organized. And now this is the building when it will be delivered. This is the building 2 or 3 years after. So you have the plants that grows from entonnoir to other entonnoir. This is from inside. You have the pool. You have the pool, and you see the trees, and you're like a sort of a villa. This is the building. This is a detail of the future building. This is a detail. So, in terms of nature, we could do extravagant things. This is other problematic of development in the nearby Paris. It is a vertical tower of sport, and in a new area that is a quite ugly area. It's the area with big blocks and towers, social, and so it's how to manage new areas in this kind of blocks. So we do all this development with the tower of sport that will be the totem of the area. Everything is dealing with nature, with plants, about climate. This is one of the last projects. It is the biggest project that we have. It's 80,000 meters square in Bordeaux. We are in the UNESCO area, so it's very difficult to build in a UNESCO problematic, so it's very highest in the architecture, historical architect. And this is the railway station. Now it's connected to Paris by the TGV. And they asked me to make a better connection of the railway and the city, because the city and the railway was not connected. And we imagined to do something very simple. In Bordeaux, you have La Garonne, and we connect directly the station to La Garonne, creating a new street. And this new street demolish a big area, and we have to rebuild all this area. So it's a mixed-use program. And here you could see our area. It will connect different parts of the city. You have, the name is the Moon in Bordeaux. It's this huge yellow Les Quais port. And then we have our Méridien that goes from the railway to the Garonne. And after that, we will change here the landscape. We had to design for this project nearby 4.5 kilometers of facade. So for an architect, it's totally crazy. In a UNESCO area, so how do you begin your story? It's like a novel, how to write a novel, a big novel. So we make an analysis of the historical city, looking how big are all the buildings. And we choose some buildings in the Bordeaux because they look very Bordelais. And we put parametric treatment on them. It's like electricity that you put on the building. So this is a grasshopper, and we introduce here parametrics, and we change the facade. So this is the facade that we choose. This is interpreted with bricks of stone, interpreted with big blocks, biggest blocks. This is without, if you polish the building here, so it's, and this, we have a lot of different treatment. It's all in stone. This is with big blocks. And this treatment has a certain affinity with the original historical buildings. We have the negative, like Richard White read of the building. So we're building negative buildings in stones of existing buildings. So it's quite interesting. And when we cannot arrive, because it doesn't fit when you do a block, we do green buildings. This is an example of the street. This is a green building here. And we have attics that are totally different. All the building will be ridden by climbing plants. And all the project is dealing with the problematic of a green area to make very freshness in 2050 when the climate will be totally disorganized. So how, our question is how we could put as maximum of plant as possible. So here the floor cracks for plants. You have this vertical plants. We have a lot of trees. This is a commercial street with a lot of trees and of plants. We don't put the pathway and the building connected. We have gaps with plants, and it is with it is a retail street, and we convinced the retail like Zara, like Adidas, to have plants in front of their big windows, and they are very happy with that. And they said, Edouard, it's okay because we put plants inside the shoes that we sell, because everybody now wants plants. So if you go in a new Adidas shop, you will see plants inside the shop, and so they like it to have in front of the shop. This is the main street. We're dealing with problematic of water. So when it's summer, you have watering everywhere, very little water, probably half a centimeter. And we torturated the building, so sometimes we plug things on it. We plug new balconies in a different materiality, where we have some sign that you can find in different areas. So you see it's ultra green. This is the entrance of the area. We maintain all the existing building that were there, but we extend them. We move them sometimes. This is the entrance of the area. This building is made with a pixel of stone. This is other areas. So we have the administrative authorization of that since a couple of weeks. And to finish, we have to do a building here. Here we have a big railway, the motorway, an échangeur. This is the moon here, and we make the landscape going up, and then to escape to all this, to the railway bridge and all the roads behind. This is the building to finish the project here. And you see the landscape that is going up to finish. This is all the beautiful areas of Bordeaux, the moon. So the moon gets up and with the trees. And underneath, this is a big retail. And these are the pots of the street that you will see underneath. This is the view of the retail. So you have the main road around the, sorry. around this, the end of the moon. Different views of that. So we were in the UNESCO problematic, dialoguing with the historical guys to do this kind of project. This one project more, very small. It is a little house. It is my gallery. Asked me to do a little house that will be edited in 10 samples for very rich guys. So this is one sample that you can have an emir who buy it in the field with the camels. And I arrived to the idea to have something that could move, change place. The material that fits the best with nature is gold. So we will do a building in gold. So this is the structure of the building in gold. The way it was built, it was exhibited in the Balsium Fair. The idea is to have a shape that doesn't look to a house, it looks to a sort of a curious piece. Inside, it is all in Ipe wood, like a box, a cigar box. This is the rooftop. This is the shape. It's better to look to something like a Kunst in a house like that, but the function is very simple inside. And collectors buy it. This is a very rich collector who buy this house for him. We have Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie bought one to put in the winery. And this is this guy, he bought one to put in his garden in Saint-Tropez. And so I have finished. Thank you. Yes.
Well, thank you for that talk. And I mean, there's so many things I could ask questions about because you do so many things that are small gestures that speak a lot. But I guess one way to begin, I was thinking back to when I was studying, and this argument was often presented in this example between the heroes of modern architecture, between kind of an American or U.S. Idea of modern architecture with Frank Lloyd Wright and his notion of what nature was, which is something which is in the nature of the materials, and the example was always also falling water, where the waterfall comes into the house, and a much more European idea of nature, more typically associated with Le Corbusier, where he had this very Rousseau notion that architecture situated in nature, but it was always something outside, right?
Yeah.
That was controlled.
I think Le Corbusier has no notion of nature.
Yes.
Yeah, the modernism is how to plug the same thing everywhere, in Japan, here, in Toronto, in Paris.
It was a romantic...
The floor is nothing.
So I thought it was curious to watch this remarkable 20-year trajectory of your integrating plants into the buildings, because some of them you allow the building to be very conventional, and then it's radicalized by the way in which the surface of the building becomes this kind of a live skin. Only in one of the I think it was the project in Cyprus, did you have a project where it almost became inside, right? It starts to, and I imagine that's because of the climate. So I guess my question has to do with how far it goes, right? how far and what circumstance the integration of architecture and landscape can take, because some people will look at these things and say, well, but it's the skin, it's not the body, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure you've gotten this question before.
No, no. You have to understand where do we come from. We come from modernism. Modernism is a building that has values that are for every country, every season, everywhere. These are the thought of modernism. It is something that are made forever, Ms. Bandero. It is things that are technical, that goes for everywhere, and we change totally the address. We are now in a world that is dealing with sustainability, and so a building that fits here cannot fit in another place. There's something very interesting to look, is the food problematic in the modernism and the food problematic in the sustainability. I was reading a book that was written in 1950, of Elle magazine, and it was how to do a good meal for the husband, for the boss of your husband, good problematic. And they said, open a box of cassoulet, put scratch
Crumbs.
biscuit on
Yeah, the crumbs, breadcrumbs.
oven 6, you put the oven at 6, and serve with wine, with white wine. Wow, nice problematic for a good food for the boss of your husband.
This is the Le Corbusier solution?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was dealing with technique, hygiene. Hygiene is something very important in the modernism. Actually, if you want to have a good guest and serve a good meal, you will say, I will do a cassoulet, the same. But the cassoulet will come from this region of France at this season, very important this season, because the duck must be very fat, and at the same moment you need to have the beams and and you will serve with a white wine that will come from a certain position in the mountain, that will be 1975 wine of a certain Chardonnay. It will be very delicate in terms of materiality. And returning to your question, I think a building cannot fit without its context, and you must marry them as maximum as it's possible to do. And so this is a very important issue. The problematic of context is extremely important, and the best way to do is to do one on the building and one on the context, to marry them. You could design the context and design the building in the same way to make them fit.
That was the other most curious thing about a number of the projects. There was one of the last ones you showed where you built that little building with the pitched roof next to the, and you said this is holding a place, right? But it's a building that appeared to be a much older building than the new one, but it was a what do we call that? It was a provocation about context. And also in the other projects,
it's a passion of context.
It's a
passion.
Okay. So you said you have a project in Toronto.
Another analogy about the context. In 1950, when you have a tooth, they put a gold tooth. You have a gold tooth in the middle of a white tooth. It's horrible. But by the past, it was a super sign of hygiene.
And wealth.
And wealth. It was the problematic of the modernism. And now, when you have a new tooth, they will paint it
white.
Boring, because if they are yellow here, they will paint it in yellow with a little frack and things to make it perfectly integrated. We have to do the same with our architecture. I haven't.
So you're going to do a project in Toronto, maybe?
Yeah, the problematic of the Catholic building interests a lot of the developer, because they want to do huge huge towers, and you have some flats that are looking to the city, and some are looking to the lake. And so to have the balconies on the top, it's very interesting because you will cross the valley. You have flats that are looking the city, but their balconies is looking to the lake. And so they like very much this concept.
Okay, I'm going to open up to questions in the audience. Although we could talk about all of the hip hop stars that get all their teeth to be gold. That would be another building. Okay, any questions?
Wait.
Oh, we have to have you on the mic so you're recorded for posterity.
I better use a better voice. Because so much of the skin of your buildings is alive, do you have a unit of gardeners or pruners and tenders to keep things, to keep the wisteria from prying through the bricks or whatever?
You're dealing about maintenance or? Yeah.
Ongoing.
How wild can it get?
I use a sort of parallel. When you do a glass building, you have guy who are doing a lot of maintenance. The guy is washing the windows all the day. He's washing his own reflet in the mirror. He's looking his face, and he has to wash his face. You see, this is a nice job. I prefer a guy on the nacelle that is cutting the rows, putting ground. I think maintenance is something very important. And we are in a society that comes from an hygiene problematic. And hygiene, you don't like maintenance. You want to do something that is forever. Maintenance is very interesting. For example, when I'm looking at a building that is made with windows in PVC, there's no maintenance and everything, it's extremely ugly. It's very beautiful when you have a door that is painted correctly every 2 years. It's very nice. We have to return to this problematic. And this is a bad problematic to say we don't want any maintenance. A garden is factually something that needs maintenance and knowledge. And this is interesting. I have gardeners in my office that is making maintenance because we have a huge vertical garden, and it's very, very exciting to when the gardeners come. We have discussion. I said what will arrive in next month. He said you will have beautiful new tulips that have a black color, so we are expecting something. And we said probably could we have banana in 3 months? He said okay, we'll think about banana. So it's a living process.
Well, it will be interesting to see because how you would do a project in Toronto, because on our own site, which you saw last time when you were here, we have this landscape which is planted with a lot of different wildflowers and plants. And I was very upset a few weeks ago because it gets very wild. And every year we've been just playing with how to maintain or how to cultivate it. And they came and gave the entire landscape, or a lot of it, a crew cut, right? So you walk out there and it's like cut down. There's no. It's very raw. It's very brown. It's very raw, and it will come back in the spring. But in the winter, it's going to look a little bit rough or a little bit bare. And so this is an interesting question for when you were to do this kind of project in a climate like this, or in Montreal, where you're also considering a building where I have a colleague years ago that did a project in Montreal that was about arranging all of the snow in the winter as a kind of skin or architecture for the building, because that's the nature you have to work with for what, Mason, 6 months? In Montreal, so I mean, would you go that far? Would you be using the snow?
In Grenoble, we have a climate that is very strong also.
Yeah.
I was dealing with a developer in Montreal since 10 years because I was advice of the town mayor. I was president of quite all the jury in Montreal. And so I try to see developers. And they said, well, the greenery, Edouard, is very nice, but the winter, the snow, etc. I said, okay. But now, with this, there's something that changed in the head of population with this problematic of 2050. 2050, we will have 6 degrees more. That is very important. We cannot change. The only problematic is to maintain that, not make it bigger, not make it 7 or 8 degrees more. And we will have, actually, we have 4 days of canicule, very, very hot, like it was in July. And we will have 45 days of canicule. So it's unbelievable. And the only way to stop that is to put a maximum of plants. And I was in July in Toronto, and it was extremely hot in the city center. And as soon as you approach the park, the temperature goes down. And so we have to reinforce that. But in July, it was very difficult to support. But in 2050, it will be unhuman to be there. And when you say that to the developer now, they said, I understand, I will do it. I don't care about the winter. Winter, it's no more a problem. We will do it.
Other questions?
Hello. First of all, thank you very much for your talk. My question was, where do you personally draw the line between maintaining the landscape or maintaining the gardens, but also having more wild kind of landscapes, like the building where you said you put most of the budget into the soil and not actually picking the flowers that would go in, for example?
I didn't understand exactly the question. It is...
What I meant was, so when you showed that project with the building where you kind of just put the money into having organic soil, and you said the most important thing was to have organic soil, and then plants would come from everywhere and kind of just grow.
Is the question, what is the balance between an investment in the infrastructure, which will cultivate the plant life over time, versus curating or selecting the plants themselves?
Yes.
Is that your question?
Yes.
Yeah, it depends. I think every project is one experimentation about one subject. We cannot experiment all the subject in one building. So once it was expecting plants, another one is I want certain types of plants. But the balance, I try to put the balance as much for the plants, for the it's very reducing to say plants, to put the money in the context, in
the atmosphere.
Yeah, and for example, I have an hotel in near Montreal to do. It's a client. He bought a mountain. He has a beautiful mountain. It's where you do ski. And he asked me to do an hotel. And I said to the guy...
A lodge or a hotel? What they call a lodge, or what do they call it in Quebec? The ski... What? The chalet? Yes, yeah, it would be the...
Yeah, but he wants a collective also pieces, because it's... where's the name of the station, ski station?
Well, there's a number of them.
It's just near Mont-Tremblant.
Okay.
Yeah, and he bought super mountain, very beautiful, and I go there, and I know quite well the plant, and these plants are very rare. Normally you mustn't touch it. So I said to him, the only way we could do is to do an ultra organic building, very sustainable buildings here. And we mustn't touch the ground. And so we have to define meter by meter where we put the color.
Where you land.
Yeah,
Yeah.
precisely. And I said, I need to do that with an architectural school, because we need a lot of blood to do that, a lot of persons who are interested. It's a micro design. And I said to my client, because I didn't feel my client, I wasn't enough confident with my client to respect the deal. And so I had an idea. I said, I will oblige you to give for free your land to the Botanic Garden of Montreal. And then the Botanic Garden of Montreal is going to rent you the mountain under condition. If we do that, we will be sure that we will do a super project. And the guy said, okay, Edouard, we will do it. And now we go further. So his land, he gave it for free to the Botanic Garden. And I said to my client, look, your property is too small. We have lakes here, beautiful, with nothing. We have another mountain here, and it belongs to La Couronne, the crown. And I said, we will go to La Couronne, and we will say, give the land to the Botanic Garden of Montreal. And then we will continue to develop that in a very sensitive and a very...
And they will be the stewards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we will put a lot of money, not in the building, because I said to him, the more we go on the top of the hill, the less we will build. And probably the question in the hotel is, do we need to build a room to sleep? What is the minimal condition for living? So all that will be questions that we don't know how to answer. And I think you will prefer to go in this area with question than to go in the underneath in areas very ecologic but with no questions but only answers.
Okay. Question here.
You did some experimenting with planting in tubes,
Yeah,
some long tubes,
Yeah.
however long. The roots had grown down almost all the way, but the trees themselves were still only this high.
because
How come?
they come from seeds, and the plants that you see, it's trees that were 1.5 years.
Just a matter of time.
How tall do you expect the trees to grow?
We
Staying in
expect,
that
3 meters. 3 meters. So it's a little bit more than one storage.
Would you ever expect to use those tubes with a tree up on top?
We are thinking to a new experimentation, because you have a tube and a tree, and then you could put the tube, and then so you have a tree. So you can introduce tube in facade to have a tree that grows in the facade.
So you might have the tree on the 3rd floor, but the tube was down on the ground.
Yeah.
Depends on the also the kind of tree, whether they go up or out, right? But those are mostly trees that go up.
I think what is curious with nature, I will give you a gift. It is something that I think about more than 15 years. First, I am very friend with a guy who's named Patrick Blanc, who did the walls, the vertical wall. And he tells me, Edouard, when I did the walls, so it's all water. It's like water, it's wet always, and the plants are in
With the
pockets.
pipe that goes through.
Yeah, with
That's why.
pipes. So it's a sort of a cascade. And he tells me, when I imagine this wall, I imagine because I was doing experimentation in the Borneo forest, in the very...
Lush.
Yeah. And I was thinking that this plant will fit, this one won't fit. And he said, I will try to put plants that I'm sure they won't fit at all in that. Fig trees. And the fig trees, they grow very, very well in such conditions. So nature is something very complex that you cannot imagine how the evolution is. And my way to think about nature, because I cannot know all the plants, so I imagine this three sentences to have the knowledge of nature that I am going to give to you. The first sentence is, nature is so complex that it's not possible to know all the plants and all the characteristics in one life. It's true or not?
Absolutely.
And so I imagine the second sentence, if nature is so complex, so divisive, that it's not possible in one life to know them, create the plants, they exist. It's what I'm doing. So now I imagine plants. I want a plant at a certain branches with flowers on it, with big leaves, and I ask my botanist, find it. And he returns to me, and it's always better than I imagine. But it exists. So the typology of plants are incredibly big. So it is an open area of imagination that is unbelievable.
Can you imagine these? Because you showed one drawing that made an illusion this way, the way that when the trees were growing together. Can you imagine some of these plants becoming actually a structural part of the building in terms of holding things up? Or
we are doing experimentation with German about the anastomose of plants, and so
say that again.
Anastomose.
Okay.
It's the internet of plants. So you could put trees, and then pot with the same trees, and then you don't. The greffe, the way to do the greffe is very simple. You cross the branches. You take a screw, boom, that's the way to do, very simple. And so, boom, 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 you connect it, and then they will grow. You put the screws in the stainless steel, please, good quality. And if you expect, and we have friends in Germany are doing that, normally it's going to be a structure. Quite quick a structure, so you have to manage the direction of the branches, and then it could be an independent structure. So you have a temporary structure, and after that the plant will make another structure. It's dealing with something that we hate. It's time, because we want things immediately. But time is something very interesting.
One more question. Although that was a great place to end, because time is very interesting.
Thank you.
Down here, sorry. Go ahead.
So you were investing time in experimenting different ideas with different projects. At the same time, you were talking about context. And with the diverse project that you showed us, some projects have a lot of green facades, let's say, and some of them are all about views. I guess I'm a bit curious about what is the main design decision in your projects. Is it the experiment that's driving all of that? Is it the context, or a bit of both? Or
So I have two main issues to design a project. The first one is the context. That's why when I was on the Champs-Élysées, I didn't do a green building. I do an Haussmannian building in an Haussmannian context. So the first is the context, and the second, or it could be the first, is use. We are doing buildings for a human, and we have to respect them. And we are very focused about use, about how they will live, the quality of the life. Actually, we're thinking about to give to them the possibilities of doing their facade, to change the windows, and to create a living process in the buildings, and not making them live behind a facade that is a sort of a phantasm of an architect that imagine windows like that, and I don't know, and behind you cannot live properly. So these are the two main decisions. And we are very interested in the economy, low price. We try to build with a very low price. We are interested in that.
Oh, it's part of the context. also the way you describe this, the scenario of the client and the pattern of ownership, or the, you know, the kind of, you know, the relationship of the client and the city. These are also the context, right?
Yeah.
That one has to be very.
Politicos.
Yeah. Do you have a short question?
My question was only about insects, because if you're having plants in the house, I was wondering if you have someone talk about insects, because I'm assuming they might go after these.
Yes. So the question is, where and how does one deal with the insects? Are there bees?
It is very nice if insects goes inside your building. Actually, we're all dealing with sustainability, with biodiversity, and we want to do that with no insects. Are we crazy? We want biodiversity with no insect, no bees, nothing. I think if bees are there, it's very nice. And we have a very big vertical garden in our office that is, I think, 400 meters square. And so when we planted that the first time, it was horrible. We had a lot of bees of everything, moustico, and I am very patient. I know I love the bees. I love everything. I say to my gardener, I said, it is very bad, all these shitty things that are everywhere, bees. I'd like to put mosquito on that to make it stop. And he said, Edouard, you're stupid. Just wait a little bit. Because what we did, we create a new context for the insect. 100 meters before, you have a garden. There's a certain equilibre with the birds, the bees, the na-na-na. And now you make a disequilibre because you create a new garden. So everybody is going there. And so they are fighting to find their position. And he say, wait 1 month maximum and you won't have no more this problematic. And after 1 month, I didn't see the bees. They were there, but they are not so aggressive with the human.
Okay, one more, Christos.
With your amazing lecture, it was great to see the work. You use, let's say, to be a bit reductive, 2 materials for your facades. One is plants and one is stone. Now, I can see how plants could be kind of contributing to the sustainability of an environment, but if you look at stone, you know, immediately quarries come to mind, destruction of mountains and, you know, badly managed quarries. Stone doesn't seem such a sustainable material.
Or concrete.
A stone is ultra sustainable. Yeah. Ultra, it's a biosourced material. You cannot build with a better material. And it is the lobby of the concrete who demolish that. We imagine that building in massive stone is ultra expensive. It is not at all. Stone costs nothing. And the carrier, they are not open carrier. They are underneath collines, hills. All the big extraction are underneath. So it's not a problem. It's historically like that since a very long time. And the quality of this material in terms of humidity, of
durability.
Durability is very interesting. And I want to introduce an idea, very important. Actually, we build as bad as we eat. We are building very shitty buildings with a materiality that is ultra ugly. It's aluminium, very thin, anorexic building. It's impossible to continue like that. We need to do building with a good fatness, like food, a good food, you know. And this is very important. And building in stone, it's a good material. It's fat. You understand what I mean?
It sustains.
Yeah. It's durable.
Durable,
the
yes.
Durability.
Well, that's fantastic. That's a great place to end.
You can recycle stone.
Because some of us need some sustenance now.
No.
And I want to thank all of you for coming tonight, and thank you for really a remarkable presentation and also a set of ideas that you shared after the lecture. So,
Thank you.